Welcome into the latest edition of ESPN FC. I'm Dan Thomas, joined by Craig Burley and Shaka here. So Eze's proposed move to Arsenal, still very much the big headline around the Premier League at the moment. Of course, this is a deal that Tottenham thought they had done. However, Arsenal, in the last 24 hours, have come in and hijacked it, and it looks like the English international will be heading to the Emirates. For more on this, James Ollie joins us. James, obviously, we thought that Eze might play today. There were suggestions, of course, Crystal Palace in this conference playoff game, that a deal was done between Spurs and Palace that he would play in this match. Obviously, that didn't happen today.
No, it didn't. It's been quite a dramatic day or so. I think Spurs have made all the running on this right until yesterday afternoon, really, when Arsenal decided to make their move for Eze. And the thing is, they kind of knew, they always had up their sleeve the fact that he is a boyhood Arsenal fan, that he always had this dream to one day play for Arsenal. Spurs, of course, had got to the point where they'd agreed a fee with Palace. They'd agreed with Eze that he would come. Eze was quite happy to come, despite the fact that he was a boyhood Arsenal fan. He felt as though that was the big move that was available to him. But then a combination of things, really sort of the final sort of piece of the jigsaw really being the injury to Kai Havertz. We don't know exactly how bad that is, but it's bad enough for Arsenal to reassess their position in the market, but that was enough to be the catalyst for them to go and say to Palace, right, what have Spurs negotiated? We'll match that, and we know the player wants to come to us. So once they made the decision to go for it, it was quite quick, and it moved, it moved very, very fast.
This begs the question, though, James, why didn't Arsenal just get this done earlier on in the window? If they had the funds there, they knew that Eze could be available, we know what he would bring to the table, why has it taken them this long? Why has it taken it to this point?
OK, so there's a couple of reasons for that. Firstly, there was a £68 million release clause in Eze's contract that expired earlier this month, and nobody, Arsenal and Spurs included, felt he was quite worth that. So they thought, well, let's let that expire and then see where we are later in the window. The second point was that their interest was partly contingent on the fear that Ethan Nwaneri would not sign a new contract, and they felt that if he was going to run his deal down, or that they would be in a position where they'd have to sell him this summer, then that would free up the space in the squad for Eze. And then the third, and arguably the most important factor, is the injury to Kai Havertz, because, of course, although Eze's not a number 9, strictly speaking, well, he isn't at all, really. He can play out on the left or play as a number 10. They felt as though they were really short last season in those attacking areas, and that was the reason they feel internally why they didn't win the league. They suffered too many injuries in that position. In those positions, they got injured. They felt, well, is this going to be history repeating itself? Shall we actually go for Eze rather than wait until we've made some money from player income, from player sales, get that money back, get some money off the wage bill, and then go for him later in the window? And really, circumstances dictated that it was now or never, and they decided to pull the trigger and go for it.
OK, here we go. Let's try it. Craig,
day 2.
What's a coup for Arsenal?
Yeah, I think this is a brilliant move for both. As Jim said, Tottenham was the destination because he felt there wasn't another big move. But this is a fit for me because he improves Arsenal. I think he plays. He can play in 2 or 3 different positions. He's a quality footballer. I really like him. You've only got to watch Crystal Palace in England in the last couple of years to see that. He is different to what they've got in the wider areas. Martinelli's all about pace. And if Eze plays on the left, he's more of a guy that drifts around a little bit. As Jim said, he can play in that number 10 role as well. His end product is very good. He's great on the ball, really pinned him in. And the way that he just takes the ball in and sort of nonchalantly just a little nutmeg or whatever, I just think he's a terrific player. I think he gives this Arsenal team something they've not got. And I also think, and it's just my opinion, that at times last year in the big games, and you know we've had this discussion, that in the really big games, Martin Odegaard sometimes was a little lightweight. Not saying he's not a good player, but in the really big games, he was a little lightweight. And I think Eze can put pressure on him. Not suggesting he's getting dropped, but, you know, needs must. Because Eze can play that position. So he can play any position on the front line, pretty much. And he can put pressure on Martin Odegaard. And this really, when we saw that graphic there about the players that have come in, this is the sort of no excuse time now, isn't it, for Mikel Arteta? This is a really beefy, quality. This is as good a quality Arsenal squad as they've had for years. They've been in a really good position for the last couple of years. But they have really puffed their squad out now with quality footballers. Quality guys that, as James said, can come in. If Saka's out for 3-4 months like he was last year, they need quality to come in. They've got that, and that means Mikel Arteta will have to make sure his team are delivering. Gyökeres is scoring goals, and all the other facets are firing on all cylinders. But in terms of Eze, I'm happy for the boy because he's 27. This is a huge move. And I honestly think he's more than good enough to come into this Arsenal team and, most importantly, make a difference.
James, the point that Craig made, how much are the Arsenal board saying now, right, we've given you all the toys, we've given you everything you need now to really compete properly with Liverpool, and how much will Arteta be judged at the end of the season?
Yeah, I mean, he has no excuses now. He's been given everything he wanted. I went on tour with Arsenal to Singapore and to Hong Kong, spent some time with some of the executives and just spent a lot of time around the squad. And the sense was, and this was obviously before they did Eze and while they were doing Gyökeres, the sense was we're pretty happy. We look at teams, I mean, they played Newcastle out there. Look at the mess that Newcastle are in their transfer window. They felt they'd done the majority of their business early. They were happy. They were getting Gyökeres over the line. And they felt they were in a really good place. And Mikel Arteta, who, you know, has sort of habitually, I know every manager sort of wants their players in early, but he's a particular sort of driver for that, of wanting to integrate players as soon as possible. They had this sort of pre-season, again in Spain, where they kind of get the players together and really try and sort of work on that kind of team bonding off-field stuff. And then, of course, on the tour, he had most of those new signings. Gyökeres joined it halfway through. And now he's got Eze to strengthen that left-hand side and offer, you know, increased squad depth. And so everything that he talked about last season, the end of last season, and he's talked about over the summer in terms of identifying why they didn't win the league, well, squad depth, a lack of robustness in the players, an inability to be able to rotate and still maintain that first 11 at a really elite level. Those excuses have gone now. They've got their number 9 that they've been waiting for a number of years. He's got a goal a game in Europe over the last couple of seasons. They've brought in really high quality players. You know, this is Arsenal who have spent £52 million on Noni Madueke, who is not going to get in the starting lineup. You know, you think 4 or 5 years ago, if Arsenal would have spent £52 million on a player who wasn't going to get in the team, you'd have thought it was crazy money. But now that's where they are. This is where they think they should be, going for the Premier League, going for the Champions League, and signing players to give them that depth so that they can compete on full fronts.
I saw Henry Winter earlier today, I think it was, James, talking about on some podcast or programme, saying he thought that Eze should have gone to Spurs because he'll play every week. I mean, personally, I think he'll start in this Arsenal team,
right,
on the left-hand side. But what's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, Gabriel Martinelli has been